You're listening to The Outcue, a 21 News journalist perspective on a top news story.
Hello and welcome. This is The Outcue. It's a podcast that looks at the behind the scenes in the 21 newsroom, whether it's looking at content, looking at how we investigate stories, anything that's behind the scenes. So today our topic is hazing. And on November 13th, just about a month ago, we launched a 30-minute news program, 101 West, Hazing the Code of Silence. That is still posted on our website, on our app, and on our YouTube channel for anyone to watch. But it was a 30-minute program that looked at hazing in general. In the past, we would always select topics for 101 West that, were timely, that were important to the Mahoning and Shenango valleys. And when we went searching, I believe at the end of the summer for a topic, the civil lawsuits against the Catholic Diocese and Ursuline were prevalent at that time. And so it got me thinking, how prevalent is hazing? I have been here, born and raised in the Valley and worked here, and I haven't really heard as much about hazing as I did when this happened, when these lawsuits were filed. So when I just did a short little Google, my mind was blown for how prevalent it was across the country. So that got us to our posting of this program on November 13th of 101 West, the Code of Silence. So joining me today are the three talented journalists that helped bring this program all together, along with some other behind-the-scenes managers. We have Allie Ross, Derek Steyer, and Caitlin McCarthy. So what I wanted to do, first of all, because a lot of times all the viewers see you and such, but I really just think it would be fair to give us a brief background of, your education and where you've worked. And for Derek, it'll take a half hour for all his awards. But Allie, we'll go with you first. Where do you come from and all your background and such?
So originally I am from the Philadelphia suburbs, Philly area, very proud, go Birds. I went to University of Pittsburgh for college, graduated 2023, which feels like so much longer ago than it actually is. They didn't have a journalism degree at Pitt, and I actually did not go into college knowing I wanted to pursue journalism. I was going to be an English teacher. I was doing nonfiction writing, and because there's no journalism major, a lot of the nonfiction classes are journalism oriented because they kind of absorbed that. So I fell in love with newspaper writing and reporting, and so after college, I was briefly at CNN. I was in the news associate program there, which is really for early career journalists to learn how the newsroom really works. And then I was on the production team for CNN This Morning with Casey Hunt. And earlier this year, I was on the job search and I was thinking about what do I really, really want to do? And I had the opportunity to come to WFMJ to be a reporter. And, it just really aligned with the long term of I want to be out there meeting people, talking to people, and learning about really interesting, compelling topics like hazing. So that's kind of my story.
And we're really glad to have you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Derek?
Yeah, so I've been here at WFMJ for about 12 years now. It's gone so fast. Been in the business though for 28 years. From St. Louis, Missouri. Went to college, a couple different colleges, but went to Arkansas State University. And then started there in Jonesboro, Arkansas as the weekend sports anchor. I stayed there for about a year and a half and then went to Montgomery, Alabama as the weekend sports anchor and was there for about 12, 13 years. And then in 2013, decided to make the switch, move up here. This is where my wife is from. She's from Trumbull County. And we launched the weekend morning show here at WFMJ. And so super excited about that, to switch from sports to news. And it's been a great transition. And in 2015, I became the 6 and the 11 o'clock anchor. Been fortunate to win some awards over the course of the years. But it's just been a great transition from sports to news and being able to really tell some incredible stories, but also be a part of some impactful journalism that we've done here at WFMJ. And so extremely proud to be here, and I love it.
Yeah, there was no bump at all when you made that transition.
No,
Yeah, you would never know the sports background.
Yeah, thanks.
And then our young shining star, Miss Caitlin McCarthy, my little intern, wannabe reporter.
Yes, yeah. So I'm actually Mahoning Valley born and raised. I've been here my entire life and love it here. Fell in love with it since I've been here as a baby. And I went went to YSU and decided that I really wanted to stay near family, come around here, and I actually went into video editing when I first started in college, because I've been doing that since I was a kid. Like I always loved editing videos, playing video games, and then editing those. Kind of corny, but I did do that. It was fun. So I went to YSU for that, but then kind of the same thing as you, Allie. I started taking some journalism classes as a minor, and I'm like, wow, this can make a huge difference. It's super impactful. So I ended up really going down that path, did an internship here at WFMJ, and realized that this is really where I want my career to be. So I started here. Since then, it's been, I interned for quite a few months. Then I ended up going to be a reporter. I did booking for a little bit with Lindsay. That was pretty fun. And then I ended up just kind of doing this for a couple years with reporting. I've done some fill-in anchoring, done 101 West before, and just continuing to grow and learn every day here in the Valley.
Exactly. So. Very good. Very good. So I just wanted everyone to learn a little bit about their background, because these 101 West programs aren't anything you sneeze at and do in a couple of days. They take some time, and we all work together. I think it's a really fun process. So anyways, my first question, some of these questions are geared to everybody for a quick answer, and some of them are individual, but my first one, I wanted, like I said, it took a long time. We looked at hazing in general. Looking back, just give me your brief reaction to just like after it was all said and done of what you had learned. Why don't you go first, Ellie?
Yeah, there was so much that I learned about the way hazing manifests in different groups, whether it's on college campuses or in high schools. There's more variation than you might initially believe about the way the different groups, whether it's Greek life versus the military versus an athletic group, and then college kids who have tons of access to alcohol versus high school kids who maybe don't have as much, so they're more involved in that physical stuff, the way gender impacts it. It was all very fascinating to me. And I think also how far back it goes, because depending on the different people you ask, what we consider hazing now started to take shape really around like the 1800s. But in terms of, initiations and this kind of treatment that new members of a group experience, that could go back all the way to ancient Greece. And so that was crazy to me to think about. This has been a really, kind of ugly part of human nature that people have been tackling for a long time.
Gotcha.
I think for me, it was kind of what you had mentioned earlier, Sheila, in the beginning of this. Just I knew hazing existed, but I didn't know how prevalent it was. And I think, Allie, you had a statistic in one of your pieces that, was it 75% of athletes?
Yeah, 55% of college students and 74% of student athletes.
Student athletes have experienced hazing, which I knew that was. I didn't realize it was that high. And so, and I think you had another part of it too, where it said some amount didn't even realize they were being hazed.
More than 90%.
More than 90% didn't realize that was actually hazing. And so I think, and then with Caitlin's piece, I did the victims, but with Caitlin's piece with the laws, just realizing how weak they were, and there just really wasn't a whole lot of teeth. Being in the news business, I've covered a lot of the stories, the Piazza story from over in Pennsylvania, and it just seemed like that the perpetrators for this really got off pretty weak. I mean, there just wasn't a whole lot of teeth, I guess, to what the punishment could be for the people that were convicted or whatever of hazing. So I think for me, that's what stood out the most.
So Caitlin, you had the attorneys. When you were done talking all of them, what did you take away from all yours? So.
There was one big part that I thought was really weird. The fact that there's no federal law criminalizing hazing. Like, the hazing laws are different in every state. We're lucky in Ohio and Pennsylvania. We have actually some pretty decent laws compared to a lot of other states, but I did think it was really weird that they didn't have something that criminalizes hazing. Like, I felt like that's just something that, with how prevalent it is, from, just bouncing off from your guys' parts of the piece, it is very prevalent. You would think that would be something that would be illegal across the state, and it's not.
It's not, yeah. So I probably should have done this first. So our program was divided into 3. Allie had the culture and the history of hazing. Derek had the point of view of families or victims. And then Caitlin had the legal aspect of it. So with all of that said, I wanted to follow up with one on your culture and hazing, because you already hit on the fact that it went back so far. It takes a lot of forms. And then I was interested in one part in yours where some of the experts are saying people enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was another one that kind of took me off guard when she said that, was that people look back, and the quote that 2 different people that I spoke to said was they had people tell them it was the best time of their life.
Right.
Like to engage in hazing, to be hazed, and then to do it to others. So, you know, when we think about how could somebody do this to somebody else? How could somebody, you know, have this physical aggression towards another person or this disregard for their life? It's not even just something that they feel forced or compelled to do to another person because that's what we've always done. It's something that they enjoy.
Yes.
And so that psychological aspect of it was
crazy.
fascinating.
They take pleasure in seeing other people suffer and
Like the one expert said, the guy that saw somebody die said, "I don't care, it still was the best time of my life."
Yeah.
I was like,
I think he said, "I know the death was sad, but you know, like so it's just you know, it's and I think sometimes, especially maybe with Greek life, it fulfills a kind of narrative about what the college experience looks like. You know, Hank Newer, the one who said one of those stories about them saying it was the best time of their life, he kind of put it as it satisfies the need for like a college-aged romp in some people, that they just have this crazy party culture. So
that's crazy. And you with the victims, I know with all of them that you talk to, it seems like they've all taken up a cause now too.
Yeah, for the most part. So I talked to basically 3 different families. 2 families of Greek life, of their sons were suffered an incident through fraternity hazing. And then another one was 2 high school wrestlers out in Arizona. But the first one, the Santulli family out of Minnesota, their son was hazed at the University of Missouri freshman year, had to drink a bunch of alcohol, and then basically was left all passed out, but then dropped off in a room and left all alone. Well, he stopped breathing. Fraternity members didn't know what to do. So they picked him up and they basically dumped him off at a hospital. His BAC was over 0.4, and the damage was just catastrophic. I mean, he basically still alive, but can't walk, can't talk, and can't see. And so they're going through a whole lot of therapy there. But they were able to get Danny's Law passed for in the state of Missouri, which basically grants immunity to anyone who calls 911 in that incident. Now, it doesn't necessarily grant you immunity from what happened, but if you call 911 and at least report it, you're not going to be charged in that aspect, because the family talked about if someone would have just called 911, if one of those fraternity members had just called 911 20, 30 minutes, an hour earlier, then we probably wouldn't be in that situation, because it goes back to this whole, you know, I love the title of what the program was, Code of Silence. And it's funny because we came up with that title a little bit after I had interviewed, and one of the family members said the Code of Silence in fraternities is real.
Right.
And I kind of, okay, he's like, you know, hazing, you know, thrives on silence because you don't want people to say anything, and you don't want to get in trouble. But so they were able to kind of get Danny's Law for the Missouri for 911 immunity. But then Stone Foltz's family, Stone Foltz went to Bowling Green State University. He died from a hazing incident there at Bowling Green State University. That was able to help propel Collins Law, which Caitlin talked a lot about, and I'll let her explain more about that. They're now trying to also get Stone's Law into effect, which would put their hazing education program in the curriculum for schools, because their biggest thing right now is education. We need to be in middle school, high school, and in college educating these people about the dangers and the effects of hazing. But real quick, let me get you with what Collins Law is here in Ohio.
Yeah, so Collins Law is the anti-hazing law here in Ohio. That is based off of Colin Wyant and his story that he had from also drinking a lot of alcohol. I looked into his story a little bit, and when I was talking to the attorney that's been dealing with his family, he was heartbroken to even talk about this, but the knock on the door that they had to receive when they heard about their son from officers, and how heartbreaking he was talking about, how heartbreaking that story was, and how that really resonated with him, and a lot of other cases he does too. I actually think he was the attorney also partly in the Stone Foltz case. So he did do a lot of Ohio hazing cases as well, but that one in particular has really been something where there's been a lot of collaboration with attorneys as well as with those with the Wyant family to make Collins Law a reality, and it really just kind of strengthened an Ohio law that was already there, because hazing has been illegal in Ohio for decades, but this is really put some teeth into that law that we did not have before. So.
And back to the wrestlers, there's not really a law they're looking to do, but you don't see many sports hazing victims speak out.
Right.
And they decided to go public because they're like, I bet there are so many other kids across the country that are going through this. We want to give them a voice, say it's okay to speak out, it's okay to talk about this, and say it's not all right what these coaches are allowing to happen. And so that's kind of the reason why they were able to talk to me.
In my code, I was going to talk about the Code of Silence and explain that we came up with that title because we came to find out no matter what group, whether it's athletics or a band or whatever, there is this silence. And it resonated, I know, across all three, which Derek already pointed out. So I was wondering, how did you come across the Code of Silence in the culture and history part?
When I spoke with Dr. Susan Lipkins, that was something that she brought up several times and explained really that with that term, the Code of Silence, it shows up in many different ways. So there's the Code of Silence amongst, the victims, that they won't speak out and they won't, tell others about what's going on because they're concerned about the backlash, not being able to be a part of this group that they want so badly to belong to. There's the Code of Silence amongst the perpetrators, that if there's any inkling to administrators, coaches, that something is going on, they deny, do not talk about it. And then she even brought up too, after our interview, and I was corresponding with her a little bit, the institutional Code of Silence.
Oh, wow.
When coaches or administrators or fraternity national leaders or whoever it may be find out about something, trying to prevent it from leaking to the surrounding community, whether that's a university community or, the hometown, because it reflects poorly on them as well. So it's really in all forms, there's this culture of, don't ask, don't tell, for lack of a better word. So.
Yeah.
Caitlin, did it come out at all in conversations with the attorneys?
Yeah, actually, to point off of what Derek, you said a little bit earlier that they were talking about, they're trying to get more people to call 911. And actually, that's something that is making the difference between laws that aren't as strict when it comes to anti-hazing and then laws that are more strict, is that they do have those kind of acts in there that tell people that, hey, you're immune if you call 911. And they're saying that that's making a huge difference because a lot of people they're scared. They're scared they're going to get in trouble when something happens. And so, that could take somebody's life.
And we're talking immunity just of bystanders, not people actually doing it, correct?
That depends on the state.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, because I know I believe it's Pennsylvania where they say that, even if you are involved, you can be immune as long as you do call 911. But it all depends. I know Florida has some state laws that are kind of similar to that too. So,
do you know in Pennsylvania, and it's okay if you don't know like nitty gritty, but is it just that individual person that calls 911, or if a group of people makes the decision to call 911, would it be that whole group, or just the person who's actually on the phone?
I think it's the person. I wouldn't even say I think. When I was talking, it did seem more like the person that is calling is the one that's going to get that immunity. Not everybody's going to get immunity because one person in the group calls 911.
And that's the vibe I got on the Missouri one for Danny's law too. It's just the person that calls.
Yeah, because obviously all those other people aren't making that same effort.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the legal aspects, and this could go to everyone too, what did you hear from all the experts you spoke to on what more needs to be done when it comes to the legal part of it? There's 6 states that don't have any hazing. Everybody else does, and it's sort of lame, we think. So what did your experts say?
My experts were pessimists. I asked them, what more can we do to educate people? What more can we do to prevent hazing? And they were kind of like, we think people know about hazing and they know it's wrong and they do it anyway. One gentleman, Dr. Walter Kimbrough, he told me that from his experience, even in states where there are harsh laws, harsh laws in Ohio, harsh laws in Pennsylvania, people still get hazed here.
Well, just like people drive fast, he said,
yes,
I think.
People speed, people drink underage. There are some cultures, this was the quote that kind of opened our piece, there are some cultures that are just very difficult to change. So he wrote a piece called The Unwinnable War about hazing.
Wow.
So they weren't very optimistic that anything can be done, which was it was very sobering.
Yes.
I think for me, when I was looking into this, they are getting more strict over time with laws, but yes, this is still happening. And actually, I also, for my piece, I also went to Kimbrough as well, as pointed to you. And yeah, he did kind of talk about how it really is a culture thing, and that no matter how strict the laws are, people know. They're just going to get more secretive about it. There's going to be other ways to do it. So there's a lot of that, but also when I was talking to some of the attorneys, that didn't mean that there was no hope. There should be something in there that gives a punishment if they're going to be doing something to somebody. And I think that's really what they were focusing on, is they're saying, hey, if you're doing these criminal acts, there should be something to at least make you think twice before you do it. That's how you're going to make a difference. But I think overall, everybody, even the attorneys, were agreeing it's culture. It's a culture that needs to be changed, and that's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
So it's going to be a long process.
And I think for me, again, back to the education piece, that's what the Foltz family is really trying to get. They're like, we didn't know anything about, they said we didn't know anything about hazing. My son didn't know anything about hazing. If we'd have learned that, if when you go and you step on college campus and maybe where all these fraternities have their little booths set up, if there's some sort of hazing platform or documentation or whatever it may be, maybe it will make a difference. But when I was in college, I joined a fraternity that had just come back from being banished because of
how many years
hazing.
banished?
Like a year.
Oh, okay.
A year, and you see it all the time. You see all these fraternities or sororities on campuses. They get their charters revoked or whatever it may be because of some sort of incident, but they always come back. It doesn't seem to change.
And you didn't see any hazing when you were a member then?
When I did it, no, because we were under strict guidance
Yeah.
not to haze, and so it was different there. But we saw it with the other ones.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I also joined a sorority very shortly after it recolonized, not related to hazing. It just was frankly unpopular on campus, so it disbanded and came back 4 years later under a new identity. But we were under a lot of supervision that other groups were not under, because we were so new and they were walking us through, this is how you do recruitment. So even if anyone had wanted to haze, there would not have been an opportunity. So really that supervision may be one thing that can really prevent it. And I think also just like, there needs to be a stigma against hazing, not a stigma against being hazed and being a victim, but it needs to be like uncool to haze somebody else, and that's a much larger cultural shift.
Right, and think about the fact too, the people that got hazed, well I went through it, now I need to put somebody else through it. And it just perpetuates this cycle of needing to keep this going.
Right.
And it keeps getting it gets worse too from the people I was talking to. Sometimes, it started with, just things like alcohol, and now it's violent sometimes in some cases. But I know from experience too, there's like little signs that you can even see in high school when you have like certain teams and things like that where hazing is, or there can even just be like bullying, things like that could end up being hazing down in the future if it's not prevented immediately. So if someone's doing that in high school, why would you think, oh, that's wrong in college? You're not going to.
No.
And the psyche of kids just wanting to belong, just be part of that team, part of that organization, what they're willing to endure, and how real the peer pressure is.
In talking about legal, we had our own little legal with this half-hour program, because we had all done our interviews, and there were some topics that were pretty sketchy or pretty, over the line. And, we detailed, there were some in yours, and I know obviously language in his. So I detailed a good email to our FCC attorney, because without the message and the information that we gathered, if we couldn't put that out there, what is our story worth? So, it wasn't that bad, and the FCC attorney said as long as we put up our disclaimer, which we did, but that was a good exercise to go through, that, we were making sure that we were mindful of every little word that we were saying in the piece, but all those words were impactful.
Yes, you water it down if you're not explaining and telling the whole story.
Right. It's not just like horsing around, doing a little initiation. Like this is, in some cases, very real sexual assault.
Yes.
And it's
Rape.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Right. So I know with your one stand-up, Allie, you said, and it's sort of like the elephant in the room. Why didn't these victims just say no or leave or get out? Can you speak of that, or what the experts say?
Essentially, what they said is that there's no real gray area. There's not really a situation in which people can say, no, I don't want to be hazed, and then, they still join that group, and they still make friends, and they still belong in the same way that other members belong. If they make a report, especially to, leadership, administrators, coaches, whatever it may be, if they speak out more publicly, then the backlash can be even greater. And so really the trade-off is, I'm going to be hazed, I'm going to join this group, I'm not going to say anything, and I'm going to be a real member and belong in the way that I want to belong. or I'm going to blow this whole thing up. I'm not going to get to be a part of the group that I want to be in. Who knows if another fraternity will take me if I try to
Right.
rush again. And the whole thing's going to go down. And a lot of people, they choose the first option.
Right, right.
They do.
So for this half-hour program, we interviewed 10 different experts, people.
Wow.
And so I went through all the interviews. So what I wanted to do now, because when I went through all of those, I learned so much, and we were able to craft our campaign and craft our promos. So I'm going to read a line from one of your interviews and just give me the initial reaction. We might even have touched on some of these topics or whatever. But Caitlin, I'll start with you. It was one that Attorney Alto said. He says the types of things that were happening 20 years ago are not the types of things that are happening today.
Yeah. And that's exactly kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier, is it gets worse and worse. Someone's like, well, this happened to me and no one stopped it. So I can do this, but make it better. And it keeps happening and it keeps spiraling, and that culture keeps getting stronger and stronger. And that's why we're seeing those severe cases of hazing and a lot of, and people die every year of hazing.
Right.
So, and I think that really put a highlight on that.
Yeah, right.
They keep crossing the line a little bit more and
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, gone are the days. I know my husband said something like drinking a goldfish or something,
Right,
swallowing the
right.
goldfish. They're not doing
Right,
that stuff now. So Derek, for you with the
Yeah.
Santulli family,
Okay.
and that's the family whose son
Is alive.
and still trying to
Yes,
make
still
a comeback.
Yeah, they're going through all kinds of therapies. Yep.
I believe it was the father said,
Yep.
part of the problem is the parents. They're in denial about the boys, so that's part of the problem is the parents. They need to step up.
Yeah, and in fact, both families, the Santulli family and the Fultz family, both, I asked them, I said, did any of these families or perpetrators reach out to you and say,
Yeah.
I'm sorry? None. Not one called and said, I have remorse, I'm so sorry. Looking back, I've been able to reflect on what happened, and I can see why this is wrong. And yeah, the parents, in fact, the wrestlers talk about the parents of the perpetrators in their case are the ones that are spreading the backlash and
False
the lies,
rumors.
false rumors and everything, saying my kids didn't, this is not happening. You're just lying because you didn't make state or you didn't do this or whatever it may be. And they're like, their families, their kids are the ones that are doing this.
Right.
And they're absolutely in denial of what's going on under their own roof.
Unbelievable. So for you, Allie, it was Dr. Susan Lipkins, who I remember when I was Googling initially. She was the first one that came up. I mean, she's an expert on hazing. She says, I think that sexualized hazing has increased because it's so easy. It's a quick way of letting you know that you're at the bottom of the ladder and you have no power.
Wow.
Yeah, when we had our conversation, that quote and the surrounding context of it actually hit me very hard, because I wasn't expecting her to say, I think this was, even in the context of high school
I think it was.
athletic teams specifically.
Correct.
And I was asking, I didn't expect her to say that high school teams were more likely to sexually haze than college students. I asked her why that was, and she said, high school students, they don't often have a lot of unsupervised time to haze. So they need the most bang for their buck. Like the most traumatic thing you can do to a person in the least amount of time. It gives me goosebumps even now. It's like, it makes you want to throw up. That's just, and when people kind of try to make excuses for hazing, that it's just, it's a good time, no one's really getting hurt, it's, just boys being boys, all that stuff. It's like, no, these kids are really hurting each other, and some of them really want to hurt each other in a very deep psychological way, and I don't know, it just upset me, to hear that.
It's sickening.
It is.
And Allie, something in your story too is you said that this doesn't just happen in athletics or anything like that too. It's also like marching band and things like that. I thought that was really interesting, because I would never expect that, but I guess if there is that hierarchy there, that kind of relates to exactly what that quote would be too.
Yeah, sometimes, in different groups it can be about masculinity, but in a lot of them it is about that hierarchy, and it doesn't really matter if you're in a artsy or a nerdy kind of group, it happens everywhere.
Right. The military, and they said the workplace.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to wrap it up. I thank you guys all. And I encourage everybody, like I said, 101 West Hazing, the Code of Silence is on our YouTube channel. It is on the 21 News app, and it's on WFMJ.com. If you have a half hour, it's very well put together, very intriguing. These guys did a great job. For the most part, 21 News will be there, and we'll continue to follow the legal process as it plays out locally with Ursuline, and that's where it is going to play out. It's going to play out in the courtroom. And we will follow the developments there. But for now, I really thank you for tuning in and listening. We drop a podcast every morning at 5 a.m., every Thursday morning, at 5 a.m. This is the Outcue.